we'll get the
We're going to do the introductions first, and then we're going to go to executive session.
Okay. Well, okay, we're good.
We're good?
Yep.
Today is Monday, December 14th, and we will start this meeting at 5:35 p.m. Agenda item number 1 is to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Agenda item number 2 is the school committee member introductions. We'll start with Bobby.
Bobby Avery, Chief Administrative Officer.
Karen Paquette, Assistant Superintendent.
Bruce Damon, Ward 1, and Chair of Facilities.
Alden Physical Ward 2.
Kieran Majoris Collins, Ward 3, and Chair of Curriculum.
Jake Lenz, Superintendent of Schools.
Megan Parks, at large.
Tanya Whitlow, Ward 4, Negotiations. Linnea Hawkins, Ward 5.
Ron Potvin, Ward 6, Chair of Finance.
Paul Bopelant, Ward 7.
Alicia Ring, City Council Representative, Parliamentarian, and Chair of Policy.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules to pick up item number 4 prior to item number 3. We appear to have a member of the public here, and I've also received recently a couple of complaints that we are entering into executive session at the beginning of meetings instead of at the end without determining when we'll be done, so folks don't know when to come back and participate in our meetings. I realize this could have been raised a little earlier, but I would still like to see if the committee has appetite to do that.
Second.
Anyone else have any discussion on this? Mr. Majoris Collins?
Yeah, this committee has been admirable in its efforts to ensure that all of our votes are taken in public, even our votes to adjourn at the end of meetings. But the difficulty posed to members of the public in observing our deliberative business when we have an executive session of indeterminate length at the beginning of a meeting is considerable. We don't have any way of telling people when to come back because we don't know what time we're going to be done. And I think it's unreasonable to ask folks who have interest in the business of this committee to sit in front of a blank computer screen for an indefinite period of time to see the public's business done.
Thank you. Did you want me to comment on why we did it this way, or would you like to? Or
I guess I would say that the reason that we've invited this is we have representation available for us tonight for the executive session item, and trying to be mindful of that schedule as well. But I see both sides of the coin for sure.
Just in response to that, I totally understand and value our attorney's time, but if we're looking at this in a utilitarian sense, the public is all of Lewiston and our constituents who are related to Lewiston Public Schools, of which there are many. And so I think especially in these times, you know, you can tell if the door's closed and everyone's here, then you can tell when to come back. But if you just walk away from your computer and forget, people might miss what they're here to participate in. So my thoughts on the matter.
any further discussion? Ward 1?
We're voting to suspend the rules and
Yes.
just change the order.
She asked to change justice.
Or just,
Just suspend the rules right now.
Well, yeah, go ahead. You might be able to say it worse.
Well, a point of clarification with the parliamentarian. The initial vote here is just to suspend the rules to consider changing the agenda item order. Yes.
Gosh, I guess I haven't run into this situation before.
It can be all inclusive if you want it to be all
I would
inclusive.
like it to be all inclusive.
Okay.
Let's just get it done.
Can I say something before we?
Yes.
I think these are extremely valid points, but I would think that we'd want to not suspend the rules and change the order since we have our attorney here tonight. But going forward, maybe we do it differently. I respect Dan's time, and I know he's with us a lot of evenings, and I don't see why we need to keep him here any longer.
Any further discussion? Or,
The agenda was published and we saw it, so.
it was sent out on Thursday, yes.
Anybody who saw it since Thursday knows what the order sequence was.
Yes.
I actually, to your point, Member David, that there may be people who are not chiming in right now because they know there's an executive session who will miss the item number 4 conversation if they jump in later in an executive session and never return to it.
People anticipating that it'll be later, so they don't plan to attend until later, yes.
It could go either way.
Mr. Majerus Collins.
I think the superintendent's point is a valid one, but because our agenda does not specify the length of the executive session, because we don't know how long the executive session will be, it makes it very difficult for anyone to anticipate when they would need to be back to participate in the public part of this agenda. And they're most likely to just be tuning in the school committee meeting when it's scheduled to be at 5:30.
Any further discussion? Ward 1,
No.
2,
Yes.
3,
Yes.
4,
No.
5,
Yes.
6,
Yes.
7.
No.
City Council?
Yes.
No.
Passes 5-4.
Yes.
So agenda item number 3 will now be public input. Members of the public may address the school committee for up to 3 minutes on Yes.
My understanding, and perhaps Member Ray can correct me if I'm wrong,
Let's move number
the motion was to move number 4.
Oh, the COVID update?
Yeah.
Not the public comment.
4.
I thought you had said move 5 to before number 3.
4.
Move 4 to before number 3. Okay.
Just for clarification, and correct me if I'm wrong, I felt like the intent of it was to do the COVID update, allow for public input, and then go into
Yes.
executive session.
Yes.
Wow. So, okay. So we're going to do the entire meeting and then Dan will be at the end. The part where Dan needs to be involved will be at the end, is what they're requesting.
So the vote was
Is what the committee voted for.
Say that again, Bruce?
The vote was 5-4.
Yes. Okay, so agenda item number 3 is now the COVID-19 update. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then public comment, and then the executive session.
Yes.
Mr. Majerus Collins?
Yeah, just a note, now that the agenda order has changed, I don't know if there's anything on the tech side that needs to change to enable people to participate.
You're absolutely right. Now we have to post the link.
Okay.
So I need a second to be able to post that link. So bear with me for just a second. I'll see how quickly I can get that done. Alright, the link is now available. Let me make sure I can.
Okay. The next agenda item is the COVID update.
So I'm sure you saw, I emailed you as well as all of our staff this weekend, just a letter, just an update, just to communicate and make sure people are aware of some of the metrics that I'm looking at and also where we're at as far as keeping a pulse on in-person schooling. And I, as I said in my letter, I remain vigilant in and around this every single day, nights, weekends, you name it. It's very important to me to maintain the health and wellness of our schools to the very best of our ability. I also shared that there's a balance there between the value of in-person schooling, but in-person schooling doesn't outweigh, in my opinion, the safety of our staff. And so I walk that line in my role as superintendent. I did share some data that came out of the county and thank staff for their ongoing work. We did have some disruptions, of course, at a couple of schools last week since we last met. McMahon right now is remote and will be remote until after the holiday. We continue to have communication with the CDC about that, but I want to be very clear that that date may shift. If it does, I'll be quick to communicate that, but right now, McMahon School will return in person in the hybrid model on January the 4th. We've had some other lighter disruptions. We've had a positive at Geiger, a student, but it's a student who has not been in school for some time, so there's no impact on the school. That was connected to a parent not being well and isolating, quarantining at home weeks ago, actually, or a week ago. And so there's no close contacts connected to the school whatsoever. We also had late last week the staff that isn't our staff, but is someone that we work closely with who operates in a classroom at Connor School here. And that individual tested positive, and out of an abundance of caution, there's a handful of staff and a small number of students who are now in quarantine connected to them. Our transportation has, has been working well. So we keep a close eye on transportation, of course, and we continue to work at it. And the biggest one lately, and part of what I was trying to share in my letter so that people understood that it's not just a spot situation at times, is the staffing. And I've seen that slowly tick up. And I anticipated some of that because of the symptoms monitoring that's required. So when you wake up in the morning, if you're not feeling so well, we ask staff and students and families to look at that symptom monitoring list. And if you have any of the major or minor symptoms of COVID-19, we ask that any major you stay home and any too minor you stay home. And so I'm thankful for staff who are adhering to that. And so if they're waking up not feeling well, they're staying home. And in the past, people might have just pushed through it. And so we're going to have higher numbers of people who are not in work. I also shared on that list of usually between 70 and 90 staff, which is not atypical for a district our size. There's also things like vacancies, building subs, things of that nature. So I didn't want people to think that we just have 100 staff out every day. A good chunk of that list are positions that are vacant and or being filled for other purposes, like when we assigned 4 people to each building as building subs. They're on that list every day as part of our sub-fill reporting. And so the numbers, again, they're kind of ticking up, and keeping a close eye on it. We are finding that the remote scenario at McMahon has been working for staff. Some staff still report to the building. We ask that they continue to wear their masks and spread out and not work in small groups. That's standing from before, but I want to mention it again so people can hear it. And we continue to just follow the contact tracing, working with the CDC. They've been wonderful. The Department of Education, they've also been very good. I got a call actually Saturday afternoon that left me a little worried because I was getting a call by way of a state official from the DOE to contact a state official from the CDC about an outbreak at one of our schools. This was new information that I did not, wasn't prepared for, if you will. And then when we pursued a couple of steps, we came to find that they had one of the schools that has a similar name, but it's in a different district. We've been very proactive about these. In fact, the McMahon going remote, it was a step that we took on our own, and we called the CDC and said, hey, look, we've got this thing going on. They actually called us back a few hours later and said, yep, you're right, you do have that going on. So we're self-reporting and trying to stay ahead of it. And so you shouldn't get any surprise phone calls or surprise posts out and about that there's something going on that you're unaware of or that we don't have our fingers on, because we really are staying proactive. I think that's an attribute to the structures we have in place, the rules that we're following, and the importance of the communication. We're not taking it lightly.
Ms. Wright.
So Superintendent Lewis, you sent an email around 8 o'clock this morning about Google disruptions. Could you speak to what that was?
Sure. Unrelated to COVID, at least to my knowledge. And David may know more from the world of technology, but there's been some, I call it misbehavior, that started last weekend or late last week in the World Wide Web, impacting some government agencies, what have you. But there was a Google outage this morning. So I get up, and as part of my COVID routine, so I guess it is related, I take a look at that latest sub list, and I go from building to building to see what our numbers are like, just to make sure that while I can say the list can get big, if a third of it is at one school, right, we have a problem. So I work to monitor that. I couldn't get into my email. And then I actually sent a message to Karen and Bobby to say, I think something's up with the network. And then I figured I'll try the news. I happened to stream at home, and I went to my streaming service, and that wouldn't work. And so Bobby actually found a news report out and about that Google was down, essentially, and they were working on getting back up. And David was messaging me some updates as well. So not related to Lewiston Public Schools, nothing to do with equipment or anything here connected to our IT department or all the things that they provide to our staff and kids. It was a Google interruption, and I don't know much more than that. I don't know if it's available or if they would even share that.
The interesting thing was that you sent out around 1 o'clock, I started getting all the notices from Google that there had been a disruption this morning and that they had just fixed it. So we usually get notifications immediately if something's going on with Google. We didn't get any of that because they were having massive problems this morning.
And you got those updates at 1 o'clock this afternoon, right?
Yeah. Concerning was the fact that if you've been watching the news a little bit, announced, was it yesterday, they had the NSA got together because the United States Treasury had been hacked. Yeah. So it's very, very concerning stuff that's going on. Foreign governments are potentially behind some of this. That's what the rumor is. So yeah, so I think it just goes to show that right now we have to be really diligent and we have to really kind of keep our eye on things. And so yeah, that was my phone was blowing up first thing this morning, I can tell you that much. And so when we have that information, I'm thinking, well, the best way for me to get this out, oftentimes is an email. Or I was also concerned, it ended up working, but it was very slow because our internal system for messaging out that is not Google-based, it kept spinning and spinning and spinning for me to get out that automatic email with a text and a quick voice. But it did go, but I was nervous there for a while. It took like a half an hour to load. Usually it's seconds or a minute. So we got the message out. We got it. We didn't hear much about disruptions shortly after that. When I got to the office, things were actually working. Different parts of the state had service quicker than others. We have someone that works down the South Portland area. They did not have connectivity when the rest of us up in Lewiston still had it or got it back. And actually Bobby had hers this morning when many of us had a disruption. So hers was already back on. So that's my quick Google update.
Was it a virus, Dave?
We don't know, actually. Google, the beauty of Google is
Virus update.
Because they don't want anybody to know that somebody else was successful.
Mr. Physick.
To kind of shift gears, I have a couple questions actually. Have we found common trends in the weird testing that identify some learning gaps due to the stoppage of school from attending?
Actually, asked that same question of our CSIP coordinator a couple weeks ago. To take last year's data, the latest data that we have, and do a comparative with the current data from this fall. And I haven't gotten that result yet, and that position has been resigned, so I will look into that.
Okay. And we begin to look at what we're going to need for staffing with the budget season coming up, since we have to address so many learning gaps.
Yeah, we started our meetings last week. We did, Karen and Bob, how many? A dozen or so. 2 days worth of budget meetings with individual schools, with a primary focus for me to address a few areas. One of them being I want to know how people are planning for the most vulnerable, and I want to know how we're going to remediate. And so principals and directors have formulated plans and put those together and have shared those back to us as a first round of proposal. And we're going through those now to see what that delicate balance is between how we come out of this from a remediation multi-year plan and how we balance that with requests from our community.
And when are we gonna see it?
See what?
So when is their plan gonna be, like when is that gonna come out as far as how, for like, you know, what you're gonna need for budget, because obviously you got a budget season's coming out, when's that plan?
Yeah, so the budget timeline's been shared. We'll talk about some things at the retreat in January, which ironically is just a couple weeks away, feels like. And then the more formal, budget proposal to this group. Bobby, do you know the date or in around the date that?
Bobby
Is
disappeared.
Bobby with us?
Bobby's there.
Can you see me?
No.
Oh,
You can now?
You can now.
Oh, okay. So as far as the timeline, I'm pulling it up and I can give you, let's see. Jake, so my internet is super slow, but Jake will have a budget overview to the school committee in March. Jake, you're going to get the budget books at the end of February. So let's see. And then we'll go into budget workshops, which is tentative dates set for that, which I think, did you all receive the timeline?
Yeah, and there's Monday, Wednesdays for that process for those of you who.
Right. So they begin, the budget overview, like I said, is on March 1st, and then budget workshops begin on March 3rd. We've got one on the 8th, the 10th, the 15th, another one on the 17th. There's a joint city council and school committee workshop on the 22nd. There's 2 additional meetings scheduled for the end of March if needed. And then you all adopt the budget in April 5th. The city council will hopefully adopt the budget on May 4th. There'll be a budget town hall meeting scheduled. It looks like it's going to be at Farwell this year on May 6th. And then the referendum is May 11th. And I'm happy to send this out to the committee if you'd like it.
So on the retreat, are we gonna get like a detailed plan of like catch up on gap learning and all that stuff?
We won't have all that formulated yet. Actually, want input from the committee on some of that.
Okay.
But we will have a discussion around some areas of focus that we want to make sure we're keying in on.
Okay. Okay. Next thing, I'm still getting email concerns that teachers are not allowed to adjust their lessons due to pacing guideline restrictions. And I guess I just want clarification. Are teachers allowed to choose the order in which they present lessons as long as they're still reporting up standards?
I'll shift that one to Karen. She lives that.
Sure, so there are, the short answer is yes, there's some flexibility, but there's also some parameters within that flexibility. So for consistency's sake, so a student that's at one school and at another school are having the same learning opportunities in case there is movement between schools. So for example, if one writing unit is being taught in one third grade class, that unit should be taught in another third grade class across the district at about the same time. And there are those parameters set for teachers. But within that unit, if there are teachers that they know their kids and they know what they need in terms of maybe reteaching a lesson or adding a lesson to that sequence, that is absolutely allowed. That is part of differentiation and that's part of best teaching practice. But there are guidelines so that we have consistency across the district around when units are taught and the topics in which those units consist of, so that students have those common experiences across the district.
So can a teacher jump around in the curriculum if need to in the sake of the learning of a child? So if it's better to teach a lesson in person, can they put it off till that child comes back? Or do they have to teach it on that day, despite that probably not a good lesson that can be taught online?
So without talking going into real detail, there is a scope and sequence within our units and within what we expect to teach. But I would say within a classroom, if a teacher makes a decision about a lesson within that week and within that unit that might be better off taught in person versus another, then that teacher would need to make a decision about how they're going to select that lesson, and then if you teach lesson number 5 before you teach lesson number 6, or vice versa, what's the impact of that? So usually they build upon each other. So if lessons 6 and 7 are, let's say, review lessons, then yes, of course, they could teach those before they taught a lesson prior. But without having specific examples of the units and the lessons, it's hard to answer that question.
And what happens if a teacher doesn't follow a lesson plan? Are they in trouble? If they try to go with their, are they gonna be reprimanded?
I would say if a teacher has
Or spoken to, I guess, maybe hopefully.
a teacher making sound teaching decisions about why they've moved a lesson based on what students need, there would never be a reason to reprimand a teacher if they have good reason based on what students need. Now, if a teacher's saying I'm moving an entire unit, or I'm moving an entire bend or section of lessons to another time period, then yeah, there would be some discussion, because then it becomes about that consistency. And if you're teaching one thing out of order, I would say, then there's that consistency piece.
This is more an elementary level piece. I wouldn't say it's not present in other areas, but there's, at the high level, there's syllabi where they work through certain things in their courses to issue credit. At the middle school, they have trimesters and they break out, the teachers have broken out what things they do at what times. And I know that in literacy, there are units that are designed to be used to address issues that we've had with data over the years, in which we have kids showing up in high school really struggling to read and analyze and write. And so part of the adoption of curriculum and those pacing guides is really around what's developmentally appropriate, how does it align to the standards we're expected to teach and then also to report out on, and those components of continuity for, again, how old is the student, where should they be, all of those pieces.
So I guess the trouble I'm always having with this is, why is a teacher emailing school committee members, emailing me, a lot of discussion along the pacing guideline, failing that? Like, is this a well-known it just seems like it's an ongoing issue quite often, that it just keeps coming up in emails, able to have professional discretion to do what's best for the kids, and that they have to go ask a coach to do that. So it's like, and sorry if I keep bringing this up, but it's kind of confusing to me that I don't think the teachers are lying. I'm talking to numerous teachers. I don't think you guys are lying. I almost think I don't know if there's a miscommunication of what's going on. So I guess I'm trying to clarify any confusion that there is.
I guess, I don't know if this will help, but we do have pacing guides. There are things that should be taught in the first trimester. There are benchmarks for those things so that they don't all just kind of get rushed in or just kind of hammer the kids within the last reporting window, that last week before grades close kind of thing. We have internally taken a look at what things we can scale back on. But when we look at data, we see glaringly across the board from years of not having a scope and sequence with specific curriculum to address the deficits. We've seen the data consistently not improve. And so the part of the pacing guide in that work is around, okay, as a collective, we are going to make sure we bring all of our kids through this place and maintain a high standard and do our best to support them. COVID has thrown us some curveballs, but I think we'd be remiss if we just removed expectations from students to get to where they need to be, whether it's remediation or go to the next grade or what have you for next year. Hopefully we're back to normal. We know we're going to have some bridges that we have to take care of. If we pull that pacing guide away. This is my opinion, and I believe this strongly. We are lowering expectations for our kids, and we are going to create deficits that wouldn't otherwise be there. And so it's an area of passion of mine, and I hear what teachers are saying. I also know that if we back off that expectation, we'll have inconsistency across the board, and we'll have deficits that otherwise wouldn't have been there.
And I'll just add that any pacing guide that we have, whether it's math or literacy or science or social studies, it chunks those standards out that standards that the state of Maine says we're required to teach and then we're responsible for. So it's a way to, and then to add to that, we have curriculum that helps us with the how, right? So there's the what, which is the standards, and then the curriculum helps us with the how. How we deliver that instruction and how students are experiencing that and how they're showing us that they have a level of understanding of those standards. I guess I would just finish with saying, Mr. Physick, that if there are teachers that you're speaking to or anybody's hearing from that are still questioning this and having would like to have further conversation, I'm happy to have phone conversations with them or have them email me. I know that administrators are in close conversation with me about what they're hearing as well. So I welcome that conversation, and it would be helpful to better understand where this rub is happening to be able to maybe fix and adjust what needs to be done.
Do you know if it's a specific area?
So it's all been mostly.
Not looking for the person, I'm guessing more like
the
content perspective. Is it about math? Is it about science? So you know what I mean?
So they brought up math and literacy. So with that said, I'd like to suspend the rules. I brought up on November 2nd about approaching this topic to almost better education and to provide relief for the teachers as far as creating just multiple lesson plans. I just feel like this is a discussion that needs to be talked further.
So if I may, if we don't teach the standards that we are supposed to teach, we'll be in violation of the law. It's the real language right now. And I want people to be aware of that if we take this kind of step, that we will be saying to the Department of Education, we're not going to do what we're expected to do. And that jeopardizes many things up to and including significant funding. I just want to put that up.
I just want point of clarification. Member Physick, are you offering a motion to suspend the rules?
I am offering a motion to suspend the rules for further discussion.
I will second.
Any further discussion? Mr. Majerus-Collins.
I don't know exactly how I feel about this yet. I'm hearing compelling arguments on both sides of this, but I think that it merits further conversation, and I encourage everyone to vote yes on suspending the rules for further conversation and potential deliberation.
Anyone else? Ward 1? Oh, do you need a minute to get caught up? I'm sorry.
I'm good.
Okay, Ward 1.
Just a motion to suspend the rules.
Just to have a
Correct.
discussion.
Considering that we've already suspended the rules to get to here to suspend the rules again, having a real, get Dan here for a specific reason. I'd like to take up this after we've had the executive session. If we could, I mean, the whole idea behind trying to get it scheduled the way it was, and that was the published agenda. So I'm going to say no.
Ward 2?
Yes.
3?
Yes.
4?
No.
5?
No.
6?
Yes.
7?
Yes.
City Council?
Yes.
No.
Motion passes 5-3.
Mr. Physick?
All right. So I've talked to numerous educators, people a lot smarter than I am, who do this for a business. I've talked to people who are curriculum directors at other school systems. I've talked to even people down in Massachusetts. that are at school districts, that are in this position. And they really found it so crazy that we are trying to follow a pacing guideline during a global pandemic, strictly as with the amount of quantity that's going through. And what is really going, is there really a lot of learning going on? The teachers are working hard, but there's not a lot of going on. They always have to go back and reteach things, because things are in person. They gotta go call this person, they gotta go call the coach to basically say, hey, can we bounce around? So, you know, I don't know if they really have the discretion to actually do that, because I just don't find it that many teachers would be saying this, that they have to jump around and go call somebody to get permission to do this. Okay? Department of Education, okay? They literally say on their website, do the best that you can. We know there's a global pandemic going on. And I'm not saying that we're suffering, we're slowing our standards for our kids. But all I'm saying is that the teachers actually have professional discretion to be able to go about and teach the way they need to teach. And I'm only just using this right now just for Corona, okay? I think we need to give teachers power and discretion to be able to move about and within their lessons, and the standards are still going to get reported out, but they need to be reported out. I'm asking us not to report out standards to our break the law, not report our standards to the Department of Education. All I'm asking is that we make it known that the teachers have the ability to be able to use that discretion. So I would make the motion to clarify that the basic guidance for guidance purposes only, and it's not enforced, it's not an enforcement if they decide to not use the basic guideline. Education should be allowed to use their professional judgment to deviate from basic guideline as they see fit without repercussion from the district's administration. So I really want to give us, the teachers, the power to go ahead and give that. Somehow there's some miscommunication. And I'm not asking them to not report out on standards, okay, because they still need to report out on standards, okay? All I'm saying is that teachers need the ability to move about the cabin as they see for education. They're with their kids 2 days. They know their kids. They know what their weaknesses are. They know what their strengths are. And I really think that with all that's going on, that we really need to give teachers rely on their professional discretion. Some of these teachers have master's degrees, for crying out loud, and we still feel the need to micromanage. Now, my understanding is that, again, there's power standards and there's supporting standards. Okay? If it was up to me, I would just say, hey, scrap it. But again, I don't want to break the law. At least this gives teachers the ability to be able to move about, and there's no miscommunication that they're not. That's all I got.
Can I ask a clarifying question for either Jake or Karen? So, like, on the front line, a school teacher in a classroom, if they have a lesson in front of them that's on this guideline that says that they need to teach X, Y, and Z, is it down to like per week that they have to follow that, or per month, or per term, or like what is the parameter on that?
So the pacing guides they're a guide. And so it's a chunk of time. So a unit may take, the recommendation may be in a normal school, in the 175 days, it may take, recommended that it takes 4 weeks. We've extended that. Those units, teachers have longer than that. They have 5 to 6 weeks. And then there's, and this I'm speaking about literacy, there's 2 weeks in between where there's some reteaching that can happen. There's some other things that teachers have the ability to fit in and add. But it's chunks of weeks. It's not to the day. There are a certain number of lessons in a unit. Same thing with our math curriculum. There's a certain number of lessons in a unit. We've even gone to the point where we've said these lessons in this unit are not necessary. Don't teach these, right? Don't teach those. These lessons cover what you need to cover. There should never be in any of our schools everybody's on the same lesson on the same day. That's not the kind of curriculum that we use, and it's not ever been the direction from the district office since I've been since I've been there.
So if the-
Point of order,
Yes.
member Physic made a motion. Did the chair ask for a second?
I would need a motion.
He made a motion.
Okay, what, can you?
Yes, I'll clarify.
I just want to capture.
So, made a motion to clarify the pacing guide is for guidance purposes only. It's not an enforced mandate. And the thought process behind that is education allows you to use professional judgment to deviate from the pacing guideline as they see fit, without repercussions.
Yes.
So one of the, there's still no seconds.
There's still no second.
I don't have all of that.
Oh.
Do you have?
So, to clarify, the pacing guide is for reference.
It's for guidance purposes only. And it's not an enforced mandate.
Or is anyone raising their hand to second or to comment?
For the purposes of discussion, to move this along, I will second the motion.
Okay, can I finish asking my clarifying question that I was asking before this confusion? Or did you want to speak on it?
Yeah, go ahead.
So if a teacher is in the classroom and they say, this isn't a good lesson to teach remotely to our students on the students that are remote one day and Tuesday, instead I'm going to teach it to these students on Thursday, Friday that week, or I'm going to put it off a week. They have that freedom to move that way.
Yes.
So as long as from when school started in September till the last day of that, I don't know, it's not semesters at every school, trimester. As long as all of those lessons are completed in that time, they can kind of mix those up, or no, it has to follow a pattern. I just don't know how prescribed these guidelines are.
So I wouldn't, like I said, there's never a, and with some further, time to prepare, I'm happy to take folks to the website and look at what our pacing guides are, but within a certain amount of time, there are lessons set. There's flexibility, but there are some things that are just not, it doesn't make sense to move, like I said, lesson 10 to before lesson 5, let's say, because we need to have what's taught in lesson 5 to understand what's in lesson 10. There are many components to the lessons, and sometimes they are large lessons and they don't fit in the time that's allotted. So a teacher could certainly take that first chunk of the lesson and teach it one day and the second chunk another day. They could certainly say, this lesson, I need to reteach this lesson again because it did, and I need to teach it differently because my students didn't get that lesson. If they saw fit that a student needed a lesson from a previous grade, they could do that. If they saw fit that a student needed to go back to lessons 1, 2, and 3 in the unit and teach that before they moved on to say 6, 7, and 8, they could certainly do that. As long as we have students who are being taught the curriculum in the way that it's been laid out, and that we have common experiences so that we can say a 3rd grader at Montello, and when we assess them on proficiency, we're comparing the same 3rd grader at Geiger, and they've had the same experiences. Now, that doesn't mean it has to be exactly the same. It just means that we've agreed on a common curriculum, we're using that curriculum, and there is a sequence of lessons and a sequence of units in which we expect students to experience. And teachers certainly can have that flexibility. I also want to add, you didn't ask this question, but I also want to add, Jake mentioned, we are looking at what we can, can move around. I just did some work this weekend and today on standards and the standards in which we're asking teachers to report out on. And some of those standards were repeated over multiple trimesters. And we're making some decisions about, during this pandemic, does it make sense to report out on this standard all 3 trimesters, or does it make sense now to just look at it in trimester 2 because that's when teachers are going to get their best piece of sessions. So that work is happening. It happened in trimester 1. We're doing it now for trimester 2 and 3 now that we know we're going to be moving forward. So that also impacts the pacing guide because when a standard is reported on, that's when a standard would be taught, right? That's when a standard would be focused on. Not to say teachers couldn't keep teaching and reteaching, but that also impacts that pacing guide and the pace in which we're expecting students and teachers
But our curriculum that we have, and probably what all schools have right now, is definitely not designed to be taught in the way that it's being taught right now.
That's a true statement. It's designed for a 5-day-a-week in person, 175-day school year.
Right. Miss Ray.
Thank you. So it was referenced before that school choice might play a role in why we have these pacing guides. And I don't think we've talked about this in this fall. Are students moving forth between schools in a way that would be reflective of the past years?
I can't say with certainty. I think there's a little less movement this year because of COVID and the number of kids who are in cohort C, which is fully remote. So some of our families in remote learning could be moving, but they would not necessarily need to report because they're not going to and from school on a bus, to report their address change. That may come later, but it seems like there's slightly less movement currently.
And then I think just commenting on the motion, it feels to me that the intent is to make a public statement that the school committee is supportive of folks working as they need to work and getting this done as they need to get it done, without the stoppages of checking in with, I think Mr. Physick referred to the coaches as kind of being the point of confusion for some folks. So I'm seeing this as a signal. I don't think it sets an exact directive for how this has to be carried out, but I think it does send a message that we recognize, to Chair Parks' point, that this is not a 5-day in-person, 175-day opportunity to teach a 5-day in-person, 175-day curriculum. And so I think that's where we're taking our foot off the gas a little bit, but I think the standards still exist. We will still report, we will still have some gains this year, but they're just not going to look like what anyone would have predicted.
I just want to reiterate what Assistant Superintendent Arquette said, that we have taken steps in that direction. It's not like we from central office have looked up and said, no, this is just like every other year, you got to get it done. It's not the approach we've taken. We've taken the approach of grant flexibility, reduce the number of things we're reporting in each of the trimesters, and that work is still ongoing because it's future thinking.
As far as the curriculum goes, going back to putting in physics point, I'd like to see some middle ground between, if it's Tuesday, we must be in Belgium, everyone must cover this at this time, to carte blanche, do what you want. Because if we resort to that, then the 3rd grade teacher that likes Native Americans will teach that, the 4th grade teacher that likes Native Americans will teach that, and you'll have a repetition. I can't believe, at least in my limited window of experience, that there's not flexibility in how to get the standards. In my experience, if I have to cover religion and it's how it unites society and is divisive to society, there are many ways to skin the cat. There are many ways I can do that. I can cover the Reformation. I can cover the Crusades. There is that flexibility that I'm not told directly how to hit the standards. Do I let my superiors know what I'm doing? Yeah, certainly. I just worry that a hands-off approach, if we went that far, might be counterproductive. I can't believe, again, I don't know elementary, but there isn't some flexibility in the way to hit it. Now, granted, their chronology gets thrown out the window. There are consequences to that. But in these times, I guess you have to make compromises.
Mr. Majerus Collins.
Yeah, so I want to offer what I hope will be a friendly amendment with 2 parts to perhaps make this motion a little bit more broadly supportable. The first one is to put an end date on the directive of June 30th, 2021. And for clarification purposes, Member Ray, the directive that I heard in the motion was that there would not be any adverse effects to teachers for deviating from the pacing guide. That was a directive, but that everything else was sort of a statement of support, that there wouldn't be any discipline associated. And I would put a June 30th, 2021 date on that, just so that we're not having this sort of be open-ended. And then secondly, in the interest of ensuring that our teachers' representatives are supportive of the change and potential conflict of labor issues, I would also ask that the directive not be implemented without the support of the Lewiston Education Association. I don't know if that's a friendly amendment or not, but it's up to you, Member Physick.
So I'm all for the end date of June 2021. This isn't a labor issue with the union. So I'm going to say no to that part. I think this is another trying to come up with a more creative way to educate our kids and give our teachers the discretion to be able to educate them. Now, again, like I said, you're still giving your stamps reported out. Still going to be all these other things, but at least it gives teachers discretion. And I guess my only question would be is, if the teachers have so much discretion, then why is this not a good, I guess, a good motion, I guess, if they have all these discretions?
So, without objection, would the committee consider the first half of that amendment as a friendly amendment?
It would be the original.
And then I'll offer the second half as a regular amendment. I won't say unfriendly. But because I want to make sure that any action that we take with regard to teachers' working conditions or discipline or anything about this, we're going strictly by the book. So I will make that motion to amend the motion to provide for LEA signage. I don't know if I'm going to second.
I'll second that.
First, they have to approve the friendly amendment, correct? Both the first and the second.
Yeah.
Yes, so the first and the second approve the friendly amendment.
You seconded it?
Yes.
Okay.
And now we're on to the regular amendment about the LEA approval portion, which has now been seconded by Member Ring.
Sorry, I'm just giving him a chance. to
It's
write it
okay.
down.
No, it's fine.
Discussion.
Just one last thing, and I'll be quiet. I made something similar to this November 2nd, and I believe if I get this correct, if I get it wrong, I'm sure Collins is correct. I believe when I came up with another amendment saying we don't have something back the next week later, that this would go fully into effect. So, with that said, I emailed the teachers last week to find out if there's been any improvement. They emailed 20 to 25 teachers, no exaggeration at all. They said there's been no improvement at all. And I think I upset a few members when I was asking, and I didn't know it was an executive session for the negotiation. I didn't know that was that was safe for that. So I just kept asking, what are we doing in regards to this? And obviously there's things we can't talk about here. So with that said, it's in the spirit of trying to improve education, it's in the spirit of giving teachers a lot of discretion.
Is your hand up? Or are you thinking?
I guess I'm thinking that I'm anticipating a potential win.
You add the amendment,
But it didn't, so it has to get voted.
that was seconded by Ms. Ray.
Yes.
And then Mr. Physick just commented, and then now, unless there's any more discussion, we'll be voting on the friendly amendment first, correct?
No vote on
No.
the friendly amendment.
Just the amendment. Legend agreed to the friendly amendment.
Oh, that's right, okay, so the, no, all right.
This is just your vote to check in with LEA. Is that right?
Yes.
Word one.
So right now, the motion on the table is to amend the motion that's been seconded. The amendment is for LEA approval of anything that is approved if it's approved.
Two?
This is on my amendment to reject.
Okay. So
This is just the LEA piece.
You're just on the LEA, yeah.
Three,
Yes.
4,
No.
5,
Yes.
6,
No.
7,
Yes.
city council?
Yes.
No.
Fails 4 to 5.
Any further discussion on the original motion? Mr. Poppin?
I just get a clarification. The correspondence you've been getting, is it particular to an age, a particular grade? Is it all grammar school, is it middle school, is it high school, is it across the board?
So most of it's been elementary school.
Elementary school. So apparently there's something. The
I'm
second
curious if
key,
it's the same elementary school. I'm not trying to,
No,
I'm not trying to dig at
No,
it. I want to problem solve.
No, different, I got no problem with the different elementary schools. And so, and I'll give you a classic example of kind of the, I guess, the communication issue. And again, I didn't see this email, but a teacher from the command school had told me, I guess it's a mandatory that is meet with the kids 4 times a week. Right, like Monday and Tuesday, and Wednesday and Thursday, you have your in-person and your online. And I don't know if this is true or not, so don't quote me on this. But they said that a couple of weeks later, they received an email from the principal from the command saying that they are to meet with their kids 6 times a week. Now, I don't know in the spirit of what that email was, but it just came up in conversation as we were talking, and they had said that, again, it's like this communication issue of, okay, is it 4? Is it 6? Okay, why is it 6 on the command? Why is it 4 everywhere else? And so, and again, I don't know what the spirit of it was. Again, I didn't see the whole email. I already had this person on the phone for like an hour and a half just talking, and obviously the time is very valuable, so I didn't want to dive more into it because I've probably been on the phone for another half hour. So that's kind of, and there's been other examples of they're saying that there's been kind of miscommunication going on. This has got nothing to do with miscommunication, but this is almost kind of symbolic of what's going on, and at least in their point of view. So I don't know. I just know that these people have been from school to school. Because I really have sought out people at different schools to find out if this was an administrator saying something different, if this was a coach saying something different. And this has been all across the board. So I don't know.
Mr. Bubbleton.
I guess the freedom that I've observed and experienced in adjusting the standards to content and not having such a regimented step-by-step is not indicative of what Councilman Physick has heard of and experienced, so I will shrink my window of experience even more and defer. Thank you.
Karen.
So I just want to say a couple of things. I've heard coaches being brought up in the conversation. Coaches are on a teacher's contract. They're there to be a thinking partner, to work with teachers, to help them adjust the pacing. They're there to help them adjust the units to make them fit with students. Coaches, I just want to put this out there and make it clear. Coaches are not in any position to reprimand a teacher, to provide discipline. It's all about helping them problem solve. And if that's not happening, then just like in any other situation with a teacher or someone on a teacher's contract, then that would need to be discussed and talked about within that school and with that person. In terms of the expectations of when to meet with students, at the elementary level in particular, but at all levels, we have worked with the LEA and the teacher advisory group to create a document that the intention was to be more clear about what those expectations are. Because we were hearing that when a school would have to quarantine or go remote, there was some confusion. So we just probably 2 weeks ago worked with the LEA and the teacher advisory group to create that document, and all administrators have that document, and it has been, if it hasn't, it should have been shared with staff. And in terms of the 6 times to meet with students, there are 4 days, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, where students are responsible for participating in a morning meeting. That would be the 4 times a week where a teacher is responsible for engaging with students to make that contact. And then the other 2 times there's an expectation of a small group lesson happening with students. And so if a teacher is remote, and working remotely, then there's an expectation that a teacher is providing at the elementary level small group instruction with a student through Zoom, not putting a lesson up online. So if that may be where those 6 times are coming from. There's the 4 morning meetings, and then there's the expectation of some small group work coming in. That is part of the expectation that has been communicated from the district office, and those expectations for the middle school, the high school, and the elementary schools have been shared, and I'm happy to share them again, but Jake and I both have shared them with teachers. So that may be where the 6 is coming from. We did know that we needed to clarify, and so those things have been broken down and clarified more, and that's to hopefully help when and if we have to go from hybrid to remote, which did happen at McMahon, and I believe they were well positioned with what those expectations are based on that collaboration.
So just to clarify, that was before you, I guess you said it was 2 weeks ago. It was like a month ago when had expressed that,
Okay,
that confusion, just to
Good.
clarify.
good. Hopefully that's.
Mr. Cotman?
So Jake, putting it into one big basket here and understanding it fully, are you telling me that in this year of COVID, where we basically have had to have the opportunity to pour a quart of liquid into a pint container, because that's all we've been given, that the state has not made any changes in the requirements to the standards, that they have kept it the same as any other normal year, and they have the expectations that these things will be followed through?
The language specifically says, do everything that you can. It says specifically in other spots as well, that there is no expectation that you not do what you should do. The standards are not being reduced. FAPE is 100% in play. It is expected that you work through your curriculum and the standards that should be in place. Now, we've already bent away from that as a district before tonight. And so I felt pretty good about positioning, with our response to pull things back and be realistic that you're right, we can't put a quart into a pint. It's not going to work. And we know that. So we've already been scaling those things back. The language from the state, not only is it connected to, say, like what you can Google right now at the state DOE website, but also in the attestation that for our CRF dollars, CARES dollars, I have to sign all this documentation saying that I attest that I will maintain the expectation the Department of Education has put out that is current. And the current documentation is that we still are responsible to teach our standards.
And that being said, I've mentioned it before, and I don't know if it will connect in, but I've always been concerned, as we had to face this year, that we've had our expectations up here at is it the 21 credit level for graduation?
On paper right now is 24. We modified it last year to accommodate seniors who were in pandemic.
Okay. But it's the state is 18, right? That's minimum.
The state minimum is 11, but it's a structure of credits that you have to get. And
okay. So my question is taking in the whole ball of wax, is there potential that if we don't have these sites so high, and we actually bring that down to like a state level that's of acceptance to them, we may not be doing what we've done in the past, given what we're going through this year. Does that create a situation that alleviates some of the pressure of how much is getting taught in such a close time frame to be able to have some flexibility? So we're not teaching as much, but what we're teaching 100% and get some quality out of what we're teaching. And if teachers feel that they need to spread something out, is there an opportunity to look at that I'm just throwing that out there because I know I've mentioned it before, but I hear this pressure. So.
Yeah, no, I think that there is real pressure. I think the real pressure is there for everyone living the pandemic. I also think that exactly what you just said is what can we peel back, what can we scale down knowing the times that we're in. That's exactly the work that Karen did in and around the reporting window for trimester 1 at the elementary level. And what she actually just shared out, I think it was yesterday, over the weekend, to principals to get a preview, to reduce as much as we can for trimester 2 and 3. So that work is happening, to pare it down as much as possible. And for the 6 times per week, that was clarified recently. But again, teachers at the elementary school, classroom teachers, they would have their kids for reading, writing, math. They're bringing in science, social studies where they can. But larger part, those kids don't typically move around all day unless they have some kind of special. So teachers would have that list of things to do at the elementary level on a daily basis. So 6 contacts a week is, it's over a 5-day window, and we do have the Wednesday mornings to connect as well. I don't know how we do education if we make less contact than that. And that contact can be making sure kids know what they have to do, making sure they have access to those things, those small group pieces which are specifically designed to support students who might be struggling, and some reading instruction, things of that nature. So I think 6 is a fair number for teachers to make contact, and I think families have been mindful that it's a real challenge and that they're okay with that level of contact. We also have some teachers who've contacted kids much more than that, from a threshold perspective. So, for what it's worth.
Mr. Beaumont, did you still something to say?
Sorry.
You had your hand up before.
No.
You're good now? Okay. Mr. Majorspon's.
Yeah, I just want to clarify what member physics motion does and does not do. I didn't hear anything in the language, and as the person who seconded it, I don't understand anything in the language that would retreat us 1 iota from the state standards. We have a commitment to meeting the state requirements for education. What member physics motion does, in my estimation, in my understanding, is ensure that no teacher faces adverse impacts for deviating from pacing and order, that the pacing guide is just that, a guide. And that in this most unusual of years, we lean heavier on the expertise of our teachers and trust in their understanding of their students, their understanding of the teaching process, their commitment to making sure the students get the best education possible, and that we really lean on, as Member Potvin said, quality over quantity, because the reality is this is not a normal school year, and we're not going to get normal school year results no matter what we do. But I think that member physics motion is a reasonable one. It sends a powerful message to teachers that we trust them, that they are professionals, and that we want to give them more leeway in how they meet those state standards, but it does not retreat us one bit from our obligations under state law.
Any further discussion? Ward 1, would you like to clarify the motion first, or are you good? Because it's pretty good.
Could you clarify what we're voting on now? Is this member physics
Yes.
motion with the friendly amendment?
Yes.
No.
Yes. Member physics original motion with the add-on. Go ahead, Jake. Sorry.
So right now, if discussion is done, we'd be looking at voting on, to clarify that the pacing guide is for guidance purposes only. It is not a mandate. There's no discipline related to it. In addition, a friendly amendment to have an end date of June 30th, 2021.
Ward 1.
No.
2.
Yes.
3.
Yes.
4.
No.
5.
Yes.
6.
Yes.
7.
Yes.
City Council?
Yes.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-2. I don't know if there's any community input on anything, any of these matters.
Oh, yes, there is a hand raised.
You got it here?
I didn't notice when the hand was raised. I don't know if I looked for a period of time.
Who's this stuff?
Okay.
Kira, go ahead.
Hi there. So I just wanted to say in quick response to the comment about adjusting the pacing guide, I'm sort of feeling like that ship has passed. And I'm sorry, I am from McMahon Elementary. Sorry?
We can hear you, Kara.
Yeah, we're listening.
Okay. So, oh, hang on. So, there's a big weird delay. So I'm sorry. It's been a little confusing because I'm trying to figure out my sound. So my name is Kara Sarmento and I'm a teacher at McMahon. I would like to put out that I feel like the ship has passed on the pacing guide issue, simply because what I really needed as a teacher was the opportunity at the beginning of the year to go back and teach some of the previous grade standards that weren't met. For example, in 5th grade, my students did not have an opportunity to learn multi-digit long division. So when I went to teach long division of decimals, they did not have the foundational skills. But in order to meet the pacing guide, I had to continue to move forward in order to be done with first trimester standards in time. So basically, I crammed in a really quick lesson on long division and then taught this higher level skill that frankly my students weren't ready for. And so even though I appreciate all these conversations about adjusting the pacing guide and giving teachers leeway to make adjustments, in order to meet the bare minimum requirements that I was given at the start of the year, I wasn't able to adjust as much as I needed. So the conversation is great, but really that ship has sailed. I've already been forced to kind of move my kids along at a breakneck pace, and they've done it simply because they're invested in me and I've asked them to. And that's just really what I want you guys to understand about these pacing guide conversations. We're well beyond when this really should have happened. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Madras-Collins.
So I understand that we're now back to the COVID-19 update.
We haven't gotten there yet. We noticed her hand up, but that is next, yes.
Right. So I want to reiterate for everyone that this pandemic continues to escalate. It seems like every time we're at one of these meetings, I say the same thing, which is that we have once again hit a daily record high in the state of Maine. 427 cases today, 105 in Androscoggin County. I received an email from a teacher today talking about the fact that our county has the highest positivity rate in the state. And this is someone who has desperately wanted us to be in person, but recognizes the increasing danger. Now, I recognize the committee's sensibilities on this issue. And I wanted to draw your attention to a decision that the Augusta School Board made recently, which was to say well in advance that they were going to go remote for the first 2 weeks after winter break. I think this is a really intriguing idea, and I'm about to make a motion to suspend the rules to consider it. And the reason for that is that we've seen in the aftermath of Thanksgiving the implications of these close contact, interpersonal mingling around holidays, and how that plays out in our school system. We have McMahon Elementary School closed for that reason. I mean, I have no doubt that the closure of McMahon is directly tied to the fact that we've seen this spike after Thanksgiving. There's every reason to believe that there's going to be a similar spike as we move through Christmas and through New Year's. Not enough people are staying home and staying apart, and the rate in our county is, like I said, the worst in the state. So to my mind, it is better if we can tell staff, if we can tell families, if we can tell the community ahead of time when we're going to be remote, and give the community a chance to have whatever viral spread is immediately associated with the holiday to dissipate before we come back. And so rather than saying coming back for a week and a half and then having a spate of cases and having to close overnight and yada, 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 like we've seen in the aftermath of Thanksgiving, we have a 2-week block and we come back the day after Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And hopefully that puts us in a position that we have fewer cases going forward, fewer unexpected closures. So there's a predictable 2-week pause after the holiday to allow viral spread to dissipate before we come back. So with that in mind, and with a recognition that Augusta just did this, and Augusta is in a much better situation pandemic-wise than we are, I would motion to suspend the rules to consider the proposal.
Is there a second? Oh, is that what you said? Sorry, I didn't hear that's what you said. Okay. We'll open up for discussion. I would like to comment on that. I think that we all should have learned something from the Thanksgiving outbreak that we've seen since Thanksgiving, and hopefully people would be aware of that enough to stay home for the holidays and not replicate that over Christmas the way it just happened over Thanksgiving. I think that our children, there hasn't been a drastic increase in children being diagnosed with COVID in the area since Thanksgiving. It's been primarily adults, and I think that I would like to challenge our adults to make responsible choices and stay away from family and get-togethers and avoid that over the holidays rather than force all of our students to go fully remote at a time where many of our students are struggling being fully remote. Like, be aware of the impact it's going to have and make appropriate decisions over the holidays is what I would like to task the general public with, rather than making our students learn in a way that many of them don't learn well. Any other comments? Ms. Hawkins?
I understand the thinking behind that. But being as I am walking around the downtown on an almost daily basis, and the number of unmasked people I see with children with absolutely no regard for the people around them, I think it would be great to be able to put that mandate out there and have people actually follow it. I just don't have much faith that they will.
I don't think that they will after the 2 weeks either. That's not going to change if we give kids 2 weeks fully remote. The people that are going to disregard that are going to continue to disregard it. That's not going to change either. It doesn't actually solve the problem.
Clarification, are we just debating the motion to suspend the rule, or did you attach?
I did not attach, and I was actually.
Yes, were you done? Mr. Majorsky?
Yeah, so I have a lot of thoughts about what's been said in those conversations, and I agree with a lot of what's been said. But this is just a motion to suspend the rules to consider the proposal.
Okay.
And I would just really ask everyone to consider, keeping an open mind, voting yes, and having the conversation in full. I think it's worth doing, especially since our neighbors to the north did it.
Any discussion on suspending the rules? Ward 1, 2,
Yes.
3,
Yes.
4,
No.
5,
Yes.
6,
Yes.
7.
Yes.
City Council?
Yes.
No.
Passes 7. So we're 6-3.
Mr. Majorsky?
Okay, so with that said, I will make a motion to move Lewiston Public Schools to remote learning for the first 2 weeks after the upcoming break, which would return us to school under our current hybrid learning plan the Tuesday after Martin Luther King Jr. Day in January.
January 19th.
There we go. So that's my motion.
Any discussion? Did you want to continue talking or not?
I just have a
Yes.
question for Jake and possibly Karen. Is that going to cause any conflict with any sort of have to be in session so many days or anything like that? Are we still within a window for some leeway?
So the language that exists currently is there's a waiver in place until January 15th. I have not heard of any change to that waiver. I can't imagine there wouldn't be, to be honest, but we have not heard that yet. Haven't heard it brought up. So the days following the 15th, if there's no new order, then it would negatively impact us and would require us as a district to maintain any days that are remaining after this waiver. Again, if I'm not a vet man, but if I was, I would say there's going to be a waiver. I just.
Ms. Wright?
You looked very urgent. Are you okay?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was hoping, I made the motion, I was hoping to make an argument for it and then go into discussion, but you've got the floor, so.
Well, I'm gonna argue for it too, so maybe you can just say ditto. So I have been supportive of motions like this that add predictability to the schedule. I think that's a really critical thing that we've been hearing from educators is, if it happens overnight, that's really difficult for them. But if we can do a little bit of planning and you know, I've voted in favor of proposals in the past, but I actually think this one is the most defensible proposal because we did see what happened with the kind of test run of Thanksgiving, and, you know, I stayed home and it was me by myself on Thanksgiving, and it was very pathetic, but, you know, making the right choice for this community was really hard. And if someone wasn't able to make that choice, I don't blame them. I don't fault them. It was pathetic. I mean, honestly, I don't know how to cook turkey, so microwave meal for me. But I just think, you know, this holiday season, we're in Hanukkah now. I know we don't have a terribly large Jewish population in Lewiston, but we're in Hanukkah now. We're about to hit Christmas, and it's a sad time for a lot of people. And I can't fault them if they make the best choice for their mental health and their spirit right now, because it's really hard to keep choosing public health options. So I think if we are able to assist with that public health option and say, you know, you had to go visit your family, you really needed that for yourself to keep going through this really tough time, then there's a grace period for folks. And they don't have to make a tougher decision on the other end too.
Mr. Wilmore?
The arguments for and against this are both very pertinent and relevant, but I just have to go on my observations that the kids need to be in there, kids need to be in the seats, kids need direct learning and all the benefits they get from that, and I would rather be told by the state. Obviously, Kernan, you have some wonderful, it's a no-win situation either way. So if I were to vote against it, it's not that you did not have a good point. And go ahead, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Mr. Madrigal?
Yeah, so in all of these conversations, I want to reiterate that this is not why anybody gets involved in public schools, in education, in the school committee. We're all deeply passionate about making sure that our students have the best possible education. And the idea of closing schools is a last resort. But I think that we're there. And I think that what we saw after Thanksgiving is only a fraction of what we're going to see after Christmas. And the reason for that is that going into Christmas, we have the expansion of the virus spread as a result of Thanksgiving. So that many more gatherings are going to have someone who's infected, have that transmitted to the gathering, and then go on from there. I really appreciate the chair's comments about the importance of taking this seriously, being responsible. You know, I sort of feel sick at the number of things that people are doing that are way less important than in-person education, that are contributing to the problems that we're facing with keeping our school doors open. But as a school committee, the only thing that we can do is speak out, and I applaud the chair for doing that. And also to recognize that we have a role to play when the virus gets completely out of control. And it is at that point. You know, so I guess the other thing that I hope that folks would consider is that if this works the way that I hope it would work and the way that the Augusta School Board clearly hopes that it would work, we don't know, but it actually may end up producing more in-person seat time. And the reason for that is that if you limit the spread after Christmas, if you keep it contained, then when you go back, you don't have these abrupt closures and you don't have cases popping up and more schools being designated as outbreak sites. You know, at that point, we'll also be more than a month into vaccines. And so I would suggest that not only is this the better option from a public health standpoint, but there's a decent chance it's a better option from the maximizing kids in seats standpoint as well, because it's predictable, because it limits virus spread directly after the holiday. I also want to address the question about the waiver, and I could be wrong about this, but my understanding is that that waiver is for the cancellation of school days, and that remote days still count as school days. Is that right?
Yes, we'll have to do some things, but yes, you're right.
Okay.
You're
So
right. Remote days would not count against us, at least in the current framework, as far as I understand it.
So provided that the DOE does not take their foot off the gas when it comes to COVID, and there's every reason to think that they're going to not only keep what they've got, but extend a waiver. But we don't even need a waiver for this, because these kids are still going to be getting the education that they're getting 3 days a week anyways. They're just getting it 5 days a week for 2 weeks to make sure that any virus spread that happens because of Christmas or because of New Year's is at least somewhat contained. you know, I appreciate Member Hawkins' point, that, you know, I hope that people will take this seriously, will do the responsible thing, will do the self-sacrificial thing around the holidays. I know how important that is, and I hope that people will do it. But I also find it incredibly frustrating the number of people in our community who won't even put on a mask. And if they won't even put on a mask, it's hard to imagine they're not going to go to a church service, that they're not going to go to a Christmas party, that they're not going to go, you know, to gather with friends for New Year's Eve. And you know, Member Ray's perhaps got a bit more sympathetic point of view on that than I do, but I understand why people want to do that. This has been an incredibly difficult year. And I think that if we operate under the assumption that people are just going to be responsible, they're just going to, you know, they're going to learn from the mistakes of Thanksgiving. Frankly, if there's anything this pandemic has demonstrated, it is the difficulty that many people have learning from mistakes. And I think there's every reason to believe that the spread associated with Christmas and New Year's is going to be much worse than the spread associated with Thanksgiving. As many people are going to gather, and more of them are going to be infected because more of them are infected. And so my hope is that this keeps our school closures just to that 2-week period in January, rather than continuing to bounce out all the way through into the spring. If we can shut it down and try our best to let the virus, where it's spread in our school community, run its course in those 2 weeks. So when we come back after Martin Luther King Jr. Day, we'll be in a position to not perhaps have to close schools going forward.
Mr. Damon?
Yeah, I won't take issue with the idea that there are a lot of irresponsible folks that are really not taking this seriously. This is serious. But I think one of the other things that hasn't been brought up that we really need to add to this discussion is we finally managed to get parents and daycare and this remote learning, this model that we have, the hybrid model, finally sort of get it so that families have a clue about what's happening. And families need to have kids in school. They've gotten used to having them 2 days in school. They've gotten used to the regimen that they're working with. And I think that it's almost adding insult to injury to say, oh, and by the way, you know, you're going to have them for 2 weeks over break, and now we're going to tack 2 more weeks onto it, and you got them 24/7. Families are suffering. There's just they need the structure of the kids going to school, and they've gotten into that rhythm, and they need that to be sustained. There's been very little. I think the numbers I looked at the other day, there's 180,000 students in the state of Maine, and there's been under 200 students that have actually contracted the COVID. The number is incredibly low. It is more in the adults. That we probably can't change. But we have a responsibility to the parents to support them as well, making sure that they can help support the kids. And a lot of them have finally sort of gotten into this rhythm. And now we want to disrupt it for a whole month. I don't think that's fair to the parents. And while I hope that this thing doesn't just explode on us, although I don't hold out a lot of trust that it may not, I do think that we have a responsibility to the entire family units to try to get them back to some level of normalcy. And I think this would be detrimental to that from a social and emotional standpoint for family units.
On the subject of, we know that this can help, or I'm sorry, I don't remember how you worded it just a minute ago. In early November, Augusta had voted to close for the week following Thanksgiving in an attempt to try to control it. And at the time that they voted that, they only had 103 cases reported. And since then, Kennebec County has jumped to 444 cases. We're beyond the 14-day incubation period right now from Thanksgiving, and the numbers continue to rise. And so I would just caution us against saying we're going to close for 2 weeks and revisit it the second week in January. And then we come back and we're sitting here in the second week of January, and then we're having the conversation of, well, the numbers continue to rise regardless, so let's just go fully remote for an even longer period of time, which I just think is not the right path to go for our students. So I would caution everybody against voting for this, knowing what it'll probably lead to, and that I think you have good intentions, but I think that it's a means to an end to go fully remote, which is what we all know that you've been working towards for a while, and I just would caution against that. I don't think that's best for our students. Mr. Potman, and then I'll go back to you, Karen.
Okay, what, can I get a clarification on the start of this motion?
Yeah. It starts after the week of January. It starts after break. So
After
nothing.
the Christmas break.
Yes. So is that big?
Okay, I just didn't know if you
Yeah.
meant to
So-
have it happen tomorrow
No.
or, have it happen. Jake, let me ask you this, we were averaging, in my numbers, I think we're around 3,000 people in the school system, even in our present hybrid model, a day here, employees and children.
Yeah, I'd say
And I
that's,
think we're at what, 36, the last count of positive cases?
I'd have to check the dashboard, but that sounds close.
So we're talking 1%. All right,
And not all of those positives are in-person folks. I've had to call on some students that are remote who have also reported because of daycare crossover or other areas of crossover, potential contact tracing. So not all of our positives on the dashboard are students who go to school in person and reported both.
let me just say that I think I'm beginning to hear both sides of the story out there. And I definitely get what you guys are talking about in terms of public safety, I have friends in the health field right now that are enormously nervous at the hospitals right now. That they're handling it, but they're not sure what it looks like if we have a spike. And we're geared up for it. And my struggle has always been, are we doing the right thing by having 3,000 people together that could proliferate this thing? And so I'm torn between that. And I'm thinking, right now, nobody's got numbers that's going like El Paso, Texas, or anything like that. I mean, we're still sitting there at 1%. And Karen, I've been dealing with outbreaks at the jail. I've been dealing with outbreaks at the bowling alley. I've been dealing with outbreaks at restaurants in the area. It's everywhere. And the weirdest thing about it is the schools have been the safest spot so far in the two cities. So with that being said, and the fact that we're still on 1%, I would want to revisit this after the holiday break, to take a look at where we're at in January. If there is something else going on in the community, I would want to revisit it, but now's not the time.
Thanks, Karen. Are we gonna have Allison speak now?
I just wanted to let you know.
Okay,
That's up to you.
yes.
She had a corporate hand up at most time.
Did you want to speak as well?
Yeah, Allison can go first.
Hi, Allison. We can hear
Good
you.
evening. Thank you. So Allison Litton, I am the LEA president, but tonight I'd like to speak as an individual employee and also a parent. I've been listening, and I'm a bit concerned by a few things. I think primarily I would encourage you to not count a already scheduled vacation that occurs every year, regardless of pandemic, as loss of educational time. It's 8 days. In the remote world, we're talking potentially 2 or 4 seat days. So, I'd like to make the distinction against that professionally. Regarding the decision that Augusta made, I applaud their effort to be ahead of things. as a parent, being able to plan ahead and not have a child potentially in a quarantine situation where childcare is not an option, to me, that's kind of an easier situation to deal with than potentially bringing them back and having either, one of my child's classrooms or both or cohorts have to go remote, or the whole school, as we've seen McMahon is currently in that situation. Absolutely true that we're not seeing much in children. It's for sure coming out heavier in adults, but we have a lot of adults in our schools. We need to be considering that as well. It's a blessing that it hasn't been affecting the children as much, but as Superintendent Langlis has spoken about, our staffing levels absolutely do have an effect. And if we have folks that are sick or unable to provide that education, and that is exactly what we'd be doing by going remote, providing that education, then that's going to be a problem. I can't take a stance on this either way as an association, because I absolutely acknowledge that we have folks on every end of the spectrum. But again, I'd like you to hear me tonight as an individual. And I think, planning ahead and being able to assist families with those goals of how do we practice remote learning at home, and how do we, work on those scheduling. I think that's the responsible way to do it, instead of being reactive to a situation that may occur down the road. I'd also like to point out that testing is not widespread right now. We absolutely likely have cases in our school that are either not being identified because the symptoms are very mild, or that are in the schools being sent home, but parents are choosing not to test. They're choosing to quarantine. So those numbers are not going to show up on the dashboards. I'm aware of a few employees that have tested positive, but because of situations where they're out of the building already, they're also not being counted on that dashboard. So, the dashboard is a great tool, but please understand that it's not all encompassing. So I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has anything they'd like my input on.
I don't see anyone with questions.
Do appreciate the input, however.
So just a few things. Oh, sorry.
Hi, thank you. My name is Jay Rich. I am an ELL teacher at McMahon Elementary School. So I teach some of our most vulnerable populations with the pandemic going on right now. The switching from remote overnight was challenging for our staff, although the district has provided us some good guidelines of what to do when we are switching over, and I thank you guys for that. You guys have a great layout of what we're supposed to do, what you expect from us. It's really hard to make that switch overnight, and especially for teachers that have been teaching for 20, 30 years, they're completely changing how they are delivering information to students. So I think that your motion to be remote after break would be helpful to teachers, and planning would be helpful for parents when they're planning for their child care. And I think that it would kind of give some consistency to children, because we're really not allowing children to regulate themselves when they're not sure if they're going to school one day or the next. And teaching with pre-K and kindergarten students, that's really important, because they're also learning how to be a student. And I really would like to applaud McMahon and how our teachers have made that switch and really stepped up to the plate. And also I wanted to apologize to you, sir. I'm sorry that I know that you were supposed to go first, and I'm sorry you've had to stay a little bit longer, but I appreciate you guys giving us this opportunity to talk. Thank you.
Rachel has her hand raised now also.
Rachel?
Hi, this is Rachel Nato. I live in Ward 2 and I teach at Lewiston High School Special Education. I just want to say that I support the motion by Mr. Majoris Collin to go remote after the holidays. In short, because I feel that I have a few days to prepare my students for it. And when we went remote, like what, a week ago or 2 weeks ago, I saw my attendance drop off when we suddenly had to go remote. And it's taken a little while to build that back up. And now that I have it built up, I feel like I have a little momentum. And I think it's better to give us some time to prepare the students. I'm ready to go full remote anytime, honestly, if I have to. But I feel like my students need some preparation for that. And they need the expectations spelled out for them, and they need to be reminded about it all the time. And I would have some time to prepare them for it. And that's why I would support it instead of having another surprise after we get back and having another outbreak or having to close individual schools, on a whim because we have to. So it's just, I think, a really good precaution to take.
Thank you.
So there's a number of things I'd like to share. And I know you've heard from me a fair amount on this, and we do the regular updates. But I think anyone watching, anybody in this room knows where I stand as far as it relates to the value of in-person education. And I think that some of my shift in tone, which was included in last Saturday's letter, was the facts and how some things are starting to bleed across the line, in my opinion. And so for the committee's purposes and also for those watching, I do want to share that the Maine CDC has maintained its recommendation to date, as far as I know, that schools are not contributing to community spread. I do worry about family coverage. Even if people know when these dates will be, it doesn't mean they have someone available when they're at work. And I appreciate that struggle. We also do some things during our daily schedule that we will work to continue to do in our remote plan, which has been established. But those things include our most vulnerable students, especially design instruction, language learning, those various lessons that have so much value in person that are very difficult, if at all possible, to do while remote. I also want to share, I'm calling it the vacation theory. I don't know if that's the right terminology, but there's a vacation theory out there that's popped up elsewhere, where if people know they have another 2 weeks off, they don't stay home, they don't wear their masks, some will, but many people say, we can travel longer, we can stay longer, and we'll just come back then. And so there's a slippery slope between extending a vacation that might just result in more behavior that includes other people. And I just say that cautiously. But I also know that I communicate with our nurses on a regular basis, and they're chasing these things like crazy. I know that I dealt with at least 8 or 10 phone calls and situations this past weekend, just Saturday and Sunday. Some of them led to nothing, some of them had implications, most of them did not. But they are things that we're tracing. Allison brings up a good point, that if there are cases out there that are not being reported because people are remote and whatnot, they're not on that dashboard. I report what I'm aware of. I jump in there and make those adjustments. But if there are things that I'm not aware of, I don't have them up on the dashboard. Staff are stressed in many cases. And while we have a lot of staff who want to be in person because they know the value of that, there are some great variables there. Again, when we look at that report, we see 100 or over 100 people out of school. I have to monitor, with Karen's help, what are our levels? And that's an everyday thing right now. This morning when I got up and I didn't have Google to check my email to see that report, I became immediately concerned that we're gonna have a whole bunch of kids show up to a school that we didn't have staff to provide for. Last week when we had to close McMahon, I went to McMahon because we didn't have a principal on site because that principal's in quarantine. Now, we had administrative help and that team's amazing and we got it done. To be honest, I didn't do a whole lot other than go and try to offer support. But not going wasn't an option because we were short-staffed. I guess I want to be upfront and share with you that we have some spots and some things that are connected to different pieces. But Connors, for example, if they get another case, Connors will be remote immediately, because that will be 3 or more. So then we'd have McMahon, we'd have Connors, and there's some other, again, spots that have popped up. And the outbreak criteria changes what you do in some of the cases. I just want to be clear about that as far as how the rules go. So if you have 3 positives connected to one setting, I know you've heard this from me, it does change the rules as to what you do next, as far as being remote and the duration. There's a number of things, as someone asked at one point, what might be interrupted. We have our RETA access performance measures that start on the 11th. We have the semester end, so every student taking an LRTC course as of the break would not return to finish their semester. And the way they've modified their schedule, that will be it for them for the year in that course, because when we spill into mid-January, we switch semesters. And so those students would not finish with that teacher. High school students would not finish in person with any of their classes for the first semester. And again, because of the shift, those are year-long classes happening in half the year. And so that closeout piece would be missing. So I think we have to be thoughtful of that. And the other thing I'll say, and it came from our management team meeting, that if a decision is going to be made to go remote for a chunk of time, I would be asking for a couple of days where it could be optional for teachers so that they have a chance to do that prep like we have discussed. But we have had feedback from schools who have gone remote, from teacher feedback through principals and directors, that they did appreciate being able to contact students, but not being required to do that if they have prep work that they need to do. So I'm just throwing all of that on your plate on top of the discussion.
Ms. Hawkins.
Just a really quick comment, and all appreciation to Mr. David, concerns about families. Having been a single parent with a child in school, last second find a daycare is a lot different than 2 weeks to talk to everybody under the sun and see if anybody can fill in a day in that upcoming time. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, doesn't mean it's going to be smooth or anything's going to work, but at least gives you the opportunity to hunt beforehand. I know there were many times when my son would get sick and I had to take time off work. Jobs do not deal with that well. Even if you have paid time off and paid sick leave, yeah, there's always hurdles. And I know this year has probably been hell on that whole system for everybody. I know it has for me, and I don't even have a kid at home right now. 2 weeks is still a good chunk of time to start finding those jigsaw pieces and seeing what can fit where. The situation is sticky all the way around. I think giving people 2 weeks is better than, hey, we're going remote tomorrow, hope you can deal with it. Different picture, same problem. So, I don't know.
Mr. Popman?
Jake, what's the end of the semester as you speak that would kind of chop things up?
I check the district calendar, but it's always right around that window, right after Martin Luther King Jr. Day for the semester break.
Right after that.
It's right there.
Mr. Madras Collins.
So I want everyone to know that I think everyone in this room understands that going remote is difficult. It presents challenges for students, it presents challenges for families, it presents challenges for staff, for administration, the community at large. But we've had to go remote at different schools a number of times already this year. And those have come with no notice. I think that the virtue of the Augusta plan and the plan that I'm putting forward tonight is that it gives people, if we adopted it tonight, it would give people just shy of a month of notice ahead of going remote. It's 2 weeks from now until the end of before break, I think, if I'm doing the math. No, it's, all right, 3 weeks. So it would give people 3 weeks notice, the 2 weeks of break and the week between now and the effective start of break. Which is, to my mind, a world better than Jake getting an email at 11 p.m. tonight, says, oh, the kid tested positive at Connors, and everything's shut down at Connors, and nobody has any warning at all. And so much of how this pandemic is going to play out is out of our control. Are people going to be responsible? Is the state government going to impose stricter quarantines and stricter regulations to prevent the disease from spreading? Are we going to be able to vaccinate people at the pace that we think we're going to? Is it going to go faster? Is it going to go slower? There's a lot that's out of our hands. And it is quite possible that if we adopted this plan and we did the 2 weeks of remote school in January, that at the end of that, the community spread would be, the worst that it's ever been, just as it has been every single Monday for the last 2 months. But I think that this is a smart and thoughtful way to give our community some warning and to give us a fighting chance of being able to contain holiday spread and move forward with as minimal disruptions as possible after this. Because with all due respect, nobody on this board wants to close schools. It is only a function of public safety and a function of the safety of our students and staff members that compels some of us to advocate for that. And it is with a full knowledge of of what an impact it makes and what a loss it is to take people out of chairs and disrupt family lives and deal with all the issues that we just talked about before with being able to educate folks. But to my mind, there is the continual virtue in keeping people alive, and there is a virtue in giving people 3 weeks notice that the schools are going to be remote for a couple weeks, rather than doing it overnight, ad hoc, different schools, different here, there. I think that there is virtue in being proactive, and I appreciate the 3 teachers who spoke in support of this.
Any further discussion, Mr. Damon?
Jake, I know that last Friday there was a change in the quarantine, went from about 14 days to 10. Is that change also going to affect whether or not if you had 3 incidents in a building, would it be 3 and 14 days, or would it now be 3 and 10? So if you got to day 11 and you had 1 more, it would not cause us to have to close?
I guess a couple things. First one is, if we have 3 and we're established as an outbreak, the quarantine is 14 days. That's been the latest communication from the CDC.
Even though everything else has gone to 10.
Everything else has gone to 10, and it's about the incubation period and the setting. Now, there's other implications potentially as far as we haven't had to do this yet, so I don't know all the details, but if an outbreak situation triggers what is perceived as a community spread, there may be other implications as far as the days that people are out or quarantined. But right now, it's 10 days for a case for close contacts. And if we have 3 cases connected to that one setting, and by setting, I mean school. It doesn't have to be one classroom, it's the school. And so it's, try to get this right. So the question is, what qualifies as an outbreak? I believe it's 3 cases. I think it's in a 14-day window, but then you're monitored for a month. So if you have any additional cases in that month connected to the setting, so like hypothetically, first day of the month you have 3, you're an outbreak, you go till the 15th, you're out of school, you come back on the 16th. If you have another person test positive within that 30-day window, you immediately go back
to your outbreak status.
But it's tied to the contact tracing, right? So if it's like,
Yes,
if there's two and then a third person, but that third person was traced to some other location, then that doesn't count as an outbreak because they contracted it not at the location.
right, so the way they've done it with us so far is it's about the same. So for example, we've had some people test positive because they lived with someone who tested positive, but they weren't at work. They were never in the building. We've had some kids who were quarantined because of a coach testing positive. I know at least several in hockey. There was a coach and an assistant coach, I believe, that were tested positive, which led to the teams being quarantined. While they were in the quarantine, not coming to school, tested positive outside of school, so it did have a direct impact on the school. So we have those mechanisms.
Further discussion? Ward one?
Repeat the motion, please.
So the motion is to go to remote schooling after the break, which would be January 4th, 2021, through the 18th, with a return to school on the 19th.
Word one?
No.
Two?
No.
Three?
Yes.
4?
No.
5?
Yes.
6?
No.
7?
No.
City council?
Yes.
No.
Motion fails 3-6.
I'm assuming you want to continue with your COVID update.
I guess I want to just remind everyone, both here and in the public who might be watching or review a tape later, that I still remain committed to staying ahead of things, being as proactive as we can. Again, walking that thin line between the benefits of in-person instruction to families and what have you, and public safety. And I haven't hesitated to close a school even before tracing got back to us from the CDC, and I won't hesitate any moments coming up. We may find ourselves in that very situation if that's how it plays out, and I'm willing to do that.
Is that your entire update?
That concludes my update.
Okay.
Is there any questions anyone have?
Public input. Members of the public may address the school committee for up to 3 minutes on non-agenda items now and on agenda items later. Comments that pertain to staff, personal matters, or a student issue should be directed to the superintendent or the appropriate staff member of Lewiston Public Schools. Public comments shall be directed to the school committee and be brief, not repetitive, and related to the matter at hand. Before starting, please state your name, address, and affiliation with Lewiston Public Schools. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak on a non-agenda item? Yes.
Hi, me again. My name is Jay Rich. I'm an ELL teacher at McMahon School. I'm also an active member and chair for the LEA. First, I do want to say thank you to all of you for the hard work that you do for our school district. I know that you guys have been putting in a lot more hours than you usually do. Thank you very much. And I know that the votes that you make in our interest, you don't do lightly, so thank you. I am here today because I was really disheartened by the news of the MOA agreement coming to an impasse. Keith, Allison, and the MOA negotiations team have been working for a long time to negotiate, and in a matter that reflects our current job demands. We as teachers are not only working longer hours, we're also working in scary and sometimes hazardous work conditions. And teachers from all across the district have voiced their concerns to you. I was here on the November 2nd meeting where there were a room full of teachers that were very concerned. We've heard the committee say that you all appreciate us, that you see us, that we are your heroes, but after multiple failed attempts to reach a negotiation, that's starting to become hard to believe. We are in an unprecedented time in education, so I am asking the school committee's response also be unprecedented and that you work with LEA to develop an MOA that honors our teachers' dedications to the students of Lewiston Public Schools. And lastly, I would also like to invite all of you, if you are interested, to come see one of my online classes. I like to invite the school committee to my class, but although that's not an option this year, I would like for you guys to feel welcome to come visit one of my online classes. So thank you very much.
How do we do that?
I'm
Is
sorry.
there a link or how do we?
Sure, I would be happy to email that to you all. I have your emails. And again, I'm Jay Rich, I'm McMahon, if you want to reach me that way, but I'll be happy to send it to you all.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Are there any members of the attendees online that would like to speak on a non-agenda item?
I don't see any hands at this time.
Okay, if nobody's opposed, we'd like to, oh, go ahead. Take a brief recess. We will take a brief break. All right, agenda item number, I think it's 5 now. To enter into executive session to discuss labor negotiations in accordance with 1 MRSA 4056D.
So moved.
Second. Ward 1,
Yes.
2,
Yes.
3,
Yes.
4,
Yes.
5, 6,
Yes.
7.
Yes.
City council?
Yes.
Yes. School committees in executive session.